Hello and welcome once again to the Aligned Living podcast. This is your host, Iesha Delune, and today we're going to be talking about the nutrient benefit of looking backwards. Now, this topic was inspired by several conversations I have had lately around the different types of resistance that I see people have to looking backwards. Now, these are things like people saying, well, there's no point looking back because you can't change the past, or people saying, now is the only point that we can take action from, so it's important to just kind of stay here. There's people who see looking backwards only through the lens of self-criticism, like to look back is always negative. And I've seen this a lot when I'm working with clients who've maybe been through some sort of recovery program and maybe they've slipped up in their recovery and they've developed, which has worked really well for them because they're now in recovery often, for years. But there's this mental patterning of, nope, can't change the past, don't look backwards, can't do anything there, work on today, work on today, work on today. But looking backwards is actually how we learn. So let's imagine a toddler learning to walk. This is happening unconsciously, but what the body is doing is learning through a process of trial and correction. So if the unconscious mind never referenced the past, the baby would have that first step, wobble, fall, and would actually never build the unconscious knowledge base that it takes to become a competent walker and, runner and all those things that it can do with that skill later on, dancing even. So we learn through a process of trial and correction where we take an action, in this case, the step, and we track for what worked, what didn't, what worked, what didn't, and we trial and correct our way to building any sort of skill. And this is true, obviously, for those physical skills. It's how we learn to walk and talk and effectively use the toilet and all those groovy adult skills that we have. But it's also how we learn what the corporate world calls soft skills. It's also how we learn how to have internal permission to show up more authentically in our relationships. It's how we build communication skills. And building communication skills is one of the pillars of my work because it's something that basically improves every single facet of our lived experience, unless you happen to be, living solo with no relationships, which no one that I work with is in that situation. So we build skills through experimentation and self-assessment of what worked and what didn't. And that is why looking backwards becomes something that is nutrient dense in terms of life nutrients. So I want to just really name, before we get into any sort of examples, there is a difference between looking backwards, reflecting backwards on something that's happened or a collection of things that have happened. There's a difference between that and sinking into the quicksand of the past and staying there. These two things are really different. And the difference is what I will be, coaching you to do and, teaching through all of my work, whether you're just listening or you become a client at some point, is looking backwards with intention and with strategy, because that's how it becomes super useful. So let's imagine it's a skill that we want to learn. Let's say it's, any sort of skill. We try that new thing that we're learning. And then it is this process of, I've got to use an actual example. Let's say it's long jump, right? So you're running along, you do your jump. What we tend to do is reflect backwards and go, okay, what went well? and what still needs some work. If I'm in this exact same situation again, what could I do differently? And this process of intentional strategize looking backwards is utilized quite a lot in the sporting industry, where I know in the Australian Institute of Sport, they'll actually get athletes to look at video of themselves performing their skill, so that they can look at it with fresh eyes and do exactly this intentional strategy. What went well? Okay, let's use the long jump example. The run up, the run up went quite well. Oh, we can see the lift off. The lift off foot did XYZ. You can tell I know nothing about long jump. I should have chosen a different example, but anyway, we're looking for what went well in terms of literally the skill. And certainly with my clients, you might be looking at what went well in terms of how resourced were you or unresourced. And that's something I covered in a previous episode. So if it's a skill that you're wanting to learn, obviously if you're rocking up for long jump training and you had a wild night of drinking and you didn't get any sleep last night, you might perform less gloriously than if your lead up was, healthy and balanced and you arrived on the day fully resourced. So looking backwards, we can look at the lead up to what happened, and we can also look at the technicalities of what happened when we're building a skill. But you can see how if you just run along long jumping every day, but you don't necessarily have a coach, you don't have an external perspective, you don't ever look back at what worked and what didn't, you're much less likely to improve dramatically at your skill than if you had those things. So let's imagine the skill that you're wanting to build is really connected conversations. And what I teach my clients is how to have conversations that invite connection and understanding instead of conflict. And this is a skill. It's not the topic of, it's not a how-to, this episode, in terms of building communication skills. This is about looking backwards. But let's imagine that's one of your goals. You've got a relationship that you're wanting to improve. Now, it might be with a coworker, might be with someone in leadership, it might be with your partner, it might even be with your children. It doesn't matter what context it's in. One of the greatest collections of data that you've got at your fingertips is reflecting after a conversation. So if you have a conversation, even if it went well, but you're wanting to build your skills, you look back at the conversation and you ask yourself, okay, what went well? What could I have improved on? In conversations especially, like where did I slip into patterns? So we tend to have conversation patterns where maybe your pattern is you're getting frustrated by the conversation, so you agree without really agreeing just to make the conversation over. Well, that's a pattern. If you're wanting connected conversations that build understanding, what you need to do is build the skill set to stop doing that, to stay authentic, to learn to express yourself in ways that invite, understanding. So where did I slip into a pattern? Or if your pattern is kind of domineering the conversation, you might look back and go, okay, where did I take over? Where did I stop listening? Where did I stop being curious and decide that I had all the answers? So it's just reflecting. What went well? What could I have improved on? And a really useful question to ask yourself when you're looking backwards intentionally and with a strategy is something along the lines of, okay, if I found myself in that exact situation again, what could I do differently? So can you feel in, let's say, the energy of this conversation? None of this has to be heavy. So even if let's imagine you royally did a terrible, terrible job at the conversation, right? Let's say that's the skill set you're wanting to improve. And you walk away and you're like, the temptation is to go into negativity about yourself. If you can just pause and go, hang on, this is about conscious and unconscious skill building. So let me offer myself effectively like the feedback sandwich, which is a bit of positive feedback. Here's what you need to work on, and finishing with a bit of positive feedback. So looking back on going, okay, what went well? And there'll be something that went okay. Maybe the first couple of sentences went okay, or maybe you didn't descend into swearing like you normally do, or whatever it is. There'll be something in there that went well. Even if the only thing that went well is that you remembered that you're wanting to get better at this and you're taking the time right now to reflect on it, that is going to make the next conversation better than if you did no self-reflection. So that can be the positive thing. Even if you felt like you did a really poor job, you can stay in this place of being in the now, being present right now, intentionally looking backwards, going, okay, what did I bring into the conversation? So this is like, how resourced or unresourced was I? What could I have done in the lead up to it that would have given me a better chance of it going well? During the conversation, where did I slip into patterns? Where did I get reactionary, defensive, hurt and offended? Where did I shut down? Like, where did I bring these patterns? Okay, at what could I have done differently? And these are the types of questions. So we're not lost in self-judgment. We're effectively sitting and choosing to reflect. And the beauty of doing that, if you've had a conversation that didn't go well, or a long jump that didn't go well, if you can go back to the other person involved and say, hey, I just want to come back and let you know that I've done some thinking about that. I've done some thinking about that event, and I've realised that I was really unresourced. I didn't, sleep well last night, didn't do this, probably wasn't the best time, whatever it is, whatever thinking that is. And in the moment, I noticed, let's say in the conversation, I noticed at this point that I went into that pattern, and I'm really working on doing that differently. So you can even say, I don't have any answers right now, but I just want you to know that I'm thinking about this and I'm open to feedback. And I want you to know that I'm reflecting, because building these skills for this to go, for these conversations to end differently and really invite greater understanding, that's really important to me. Most people will respond quite well. I've given a pretty personal example. I can, obviously when I'm working one-on-one with people, then we find the right words for the professional context or the personal context, or, how we speak to our partner is going to be different to how we speak to one of our children. But that idea of saying to someone, you matter enough that I've done some self-reflection around how that conversation went and I want it to go differently in the future, and this is my thinking, generally makes people feel really cared about. So you don't have to do that bit out loud, but it can be really beneficial if there's someone else involved in the skill that you're wanting to develop. So I hope this helps for those of you that are resistant to the idea of looking backwards, thinking that it's negative, thinking that it takes you out of the now, thinking that you can't change anything in the past. I hope this has inspired you to think about it a little bit differently, because in fact, yes, we can't change the past, but we can definitely change someone else's experience of us in the past by letting them know, hey, I realize this impacted you and I want you to know that I've been thinking about it. This is the reflecting I've been doing. If we ever found ourselves in this situation again, here is what I would do differently. You effectively have changed the past in a way. You haven't changed what happened, but you've changed how that other person thinks about it. And you've let them know that you care enough about them that you are considering the impact that you're having. And I also hope it's helped for those of you that think that looking backwards is always negative. It's actually a really beautiful act of self-love, especially for people like the listeners of a show like this that are on a path of self-improvement. We can only ever improve by looking at what went well, what could I improve on. That's part of the trajectory of improving at anything, whether it's a tangible skill or what they say is soft skills. I'm not really a fan of that term because I think they're the most beautiful and life enriching skills to learn, but self reflection is a huge part of that. And to self reflect effectively, we need to be able to look backwards and look forwards. If I was in this situation again, what could I do differently? So I hope that helps you see that there is nutrients available in looking backwards. But please don't stay there. Don't get stuck in quicksand, and keep it intentional and know that it's part of a strategy, your overall strategy of enriching your life. That's all for me for now. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to be talking with you again soon. Bye for now.